This is sound check here from my side. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vasilis Rovoulos, head of EU Public Policy for Credo AI, and effectively your moderator for today's discussion, an ever-pertinent discussion on the need for AI governance by design. And I'm truly thrilled to actually be joined in such an exciting company here today. Of course, we already had the speakers' profiles mentioned, which is already terrific. It saves me quite some time. And of course, our aim in the next 40 or so minutes is rather simple. AI, as it moves from experiments to the very core of products and services alike, how do we effectively build around the concept of trust at scale without compromising, without scaling back, without slowing down progress and innovation? And I'll invite my panelists to actually embark in big picture views, concrete examples, but also crisp and short responses when it comes to their own insights, so that we actually keep the momentum going. And of course, with no further ado, I'll dive in the questions. I feel that a really pertinent subject matter of discussion actually revolves around national levers and how Greece, as a market, as a very vibrant AI ecosystem, navigates the space. So naturally, I would like to invite Vasilis to actually pick up on the very first question that, in essence, speaks to us, the EU AI Act. And its implementation milestones come into effect. How should Greece position itself? And where are the most meaningful opportunities for leadership? And what kind of public and private collaboration would help materialize that very same ambition into reality? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invite and for being here. Sorry for being a bit late. And my joke, my schedule is not my own, but really appreciate it. Hello everyone, my name is Vasilis, Super Secretary of the Digital Policy and AI Advisor to the Prime Minister. I'll tackle your question with two thoughts. The one is on mandatory governance, and the other one is on governance that we put in place at our choice. But first, take a step back and say that, obviously, Greece is supporting the implementation of the EU AI Act, but we are in favor of a post-clock approach that I discussed. Now, the stop the clock about post-clock, there are certain things that we kind of rushed to the helm and maybe didn't think through that much. Having said that, we also need to take cognizance about creating bureaucratic circulation, therefore creating institutions that instead of supporting innovation in the ecosystem, they do the exact opposite. Now, obviously, for those who have taken the time to look at the act, there needs to be a designated authority in this country that will follow its implementation. There is a deadline, there was a deadline in Congress, actively confirm which that authority will be, and there are different options that are given there. You can create a new authority, you can designate an existing one, and so on, and we'll probably be going with a second choice, and the Ministry of Digital Governance will be coming out with a law specifying exactly which authority that will be, the personnel support that it needs, and so on. And that obviously will follow the implementation of the EU Act from the EU perspective, which is really important. But for us, as a government and the Prime Minister himself, innovation is also important. Innovation in the public sector in terms of what kind of AI capabilities we could be using to make government more efficient, make government more productive, and so on. And the AI Act ties in a lot to that. Because, again, for those familiar with the topic, there's this big, broad, wide net called highest AI systems. And I say it's quite big, quite broad, and quite wide, not only from an industry perspective, which is what we hear, but also we as a government, of course, public-private partnerships that not only make sense, meaning that they're productive and we're seeing AI adoption across government, but also have the leniency to do so. Right? When you want to incorporate AI in education, for example, obviously you need to have in mind certain guardrails, and children will be already interacting, with artificial intelligence, but at the same time, you need to be recognizing the reality that children are already doing it. Right? So putting a framework around that, I think is important. So this is just a simple example in terms of mandatory governance, we're going to be designating an authority that will be following that, personnel will be leading and so on. In terms of voluntary governance, what we've done is we've looked at across the Greek public sector, right? And obviously in the past few years there's been a bit of an AI craze, there's studies out there, and you see in other governments, not in our own, but you see a lot of work that mentions AI, but it's not actually AI. So we wanted to make sure that, A, we have a centrally understanding what kind of work there is across government, right? Because there are certain solutions that can be adopted throughout different ministries. And the second that we want to make sure is that the designated ministry, which has the technical capacity to do that, which is the Ministry of Digital Governance and Artificial Intelligence now, has a say in it. Therefore, we created a steering committee under the Prime Minister's office, which does exactly that. It evaluates all the work that's being done by different ministries when it comes to AI and digital innovation, and make sure that this work aligns with the broader priorities of the government around AI, which, to mention three, is education, healthcare, and civil protection. And the second one, what it does is it makes sure that this work is funneled through the responsible actor within government, which is that ministry, to make them technically feasible.
Thanks so much, Vasilis. And in fact, we're truly, pleased to have a wonderful palette of the AI enterprise out there. Some of them actually represent the developers, deployers, but also even the users. So I would love to actually hear from Telemachos, Panos, and Aliki. The one thing the Greek government could actually do that would really help you move faster with greater confidence down the line. Ladies first.
Thank you. Thank you to the organizers for the kind invitation. I represent Salesforce. We're an enterprise company, meaning our customers are organizations in all sectors of all sizes, including government organizations that use our technology tools to connect better with their own customers or their own constituents, if we're talking about government organizations. And I think first of all, it's really encouraging to hear the perspective of the Greek government, because you can really see, and myself being a Greek living and working abroad, I can really see the leadership driven in these conversations when it comes to the digital landscape more broadly by the current government. It's really about, and I think Vasilis mentioned that, it's about how government can also set the example by adopting AI. And I can be very quick and brief, or I can go at great lengths discussing that. But what we have seen, and my role is global, so I do have these conversations with a lot of governments around the world, is that the government has the regulator role to play, which is very important and super important when it comes to children, when it comes to consumer-facing applications, when it comes to all the ways that we as citizens come in contact with technology. However, the government can also be a great example, especially for companies like SMEs or companies that don't necessarily have the sophistication or the technical capacity to really keep the pace with technological development, to act as an enabler, first of all, as an example of adopting technology themselves in trusted, responsible manners, and also propagating the message about how this technology should be adopted in trusted ways. I leave it at that, so we keep it per your instructions, so short, but yeah, happy to elaborate.
You want to go? Hi from my end as well. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Panos Basios. I'm the Digital Data Analytics Director for MSD, responsible for Greece, Cyprus, and Malta. MSD is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. It's a US-based company. And that was a very interesting question because in the healthcare sector especially, AI comes to bring immense value. I've been actually dealing with the subject for quite some time now. And in particular, with regards to your question on the Greek government and what it can do, as we all know, I guess, in this room, one of the prerequisites for AI, if we are to talk about AI, is big data. In healthcare, there is big data. It started off with a wrong reason, so the government actually started it with Troika back then. It was for cost control, but now we are one of the few countries that have immense healthcare data, which actually it's a gold mine in my view. In the industry, there has been a lot of talk with regards to utilizing healthcare data, real-world data and real-world evidence, which in my view is essential for, at the end of the day, the patient themselves. Unfortunately, there is still some difficulty in the government actually releasing the data to someone who wants to consume them. And I'm not talking about sensitive data, obviously. I'm talking about anonymized data. And in our view, at least, Greece has a huge opportunity of becoming a center of excellence for real-world data and real-world evidence. The government can make money as well, because this is a known model for a lot of countries. So one thing that could be utilized with regards to AI in healthcare in particular is a bit of a different approach to the governance of healthcare data. And the other thing that is across, I think it's not dependent on industry specific elements, is the EU AI Act is something. It's a good start in my view, but it's very high level. It seems that currently there is a lot of hesitation within an organization, within a company, with regards to how a company, an organization, the public sector can utilize AI. And this is the main pain point, if you ask me. I like to call it the problem, the last mile problem, where we all know, there was a joke about, everybody likes to talk about it, but no one knows what it is. If you ask 10 people, they're going to answer 10 different questions. So the adoption of AI is still a challenge for many companies and many organizations. So I think that the government could act as a best practice, especially for companies who don't have the resources to support a strategy, an AI strategy, and help them as much as possible. I know that, the fortunate thing is that the government, I've seen also with the Special Secretary, Mr. Mastrogeorgiou as well, and a lot of initiatives that the government is doing something towards the direction, which is very positive. And I would like to actually see that continue. So thank you.
I will just perhaps offer some additional thoughts here and would start by saying that when we're talking about what the government has to do or should do in order to help boost the local startup innovation ecosystem, I think we need to think in broader terms than thinking about Greece per se. And I'm saying this because one of the most important elements that technology companies have to take into account and have to achieve in order to be successful is scalability. So in order to achieve scalability, you need to make sure that your product can be easily offered across EU or I would say across the world as well. So it's not just what the Greek government would do in Greece, legislating around AI, it's also what the Greek government should do at a European level to ensure this kind of homogeneous approach on legislation, because otherwise Greek companies would have an easy time, let's say, conforming and complying with their local regulatory regime, whereas when they try to offer their products outside of Greece, they would face additional blockers, which will then impede local innovation. That's let's say, point number one. Point number two, I would say we keep hearing also at an EU level the need for simplification. Recently, it's not recent anymore, I guess, the Draghi report. It's been some time now, and I don't think we have seen, let's say, this urge of simplification to be materialized. Vasilis, I can call you Vasilis, right? Vasilis mentioned the pause the clock. It was the stop the clock at some point. And what does that show? It shows that we're not actually ready to implement what we have legislated for. And I guess what I would like to offer here as a thought, to make this very tangible and very close to our everyday lives is that we heard, for example, that the European Union is planning to invest about 20 billion euros in the coming years on AI infrastructure. At the same time, there is a European Commission impact assessment on the cost of the AI Act implementation, and if you make if you run a quick research on Bing, I should say Bing, not Google, you will see that for the next 10 years, this cost will be an incremental 10 billion euros, almost. So half of the investment will be will be, let's say, spent in compliance costs. Is that efficient? We should all, be concerned and be a bit thoughtful about that. And this all boils down to how competitive our companies and the markets that we're building are, not just at a European level, but obviously at a worldwide level. We're always saying that, European Union right now is squeezed between two superpowers, China and the US. And there is an anecdote, let's say, that in US and in China, startups need three, let's say, technical experts and one lawyer, whereas in Europe, startups need 3 lawyers and 1 technical expert. You can understand how unfair the game is. So I guess what the government should do here is, and I think they're doing it. I'm not saying that the Greek government is not doing it. The Greek government should be able to build a compliance, let's say, a compliance framework that will allow companies to accelerate their market access and also be able to scale at ease, meaning offer their products in a at the worldwide digital stage.
Thank you also for those very insightful remarks. What I hear is on Greece to be an accelerator of AI adoption instead of merely a spectator. We had some really granular remarks that actually have great lessons learned from a very specific point of view, healthy point of view, very crucial sector for the Greek economy, and also AI as a global commodity. At what point do we actually war our competitiveness lenses and actually keep on pushing forward? With this in mind, we will attempt to pivot from national posture towards day-to-day realities inside organizations that will struggle with compliance and regulatory obligations that are bombarded on their side. And from that point of view, I would actually like to ask Aliki and Panos once again a question that speaks to, as AI systems evolve in production, what does human-centered AI actually look like in practice? And how does a strong AI governance framework turn those values, those very specific values and principles, into routines that one way or another simplify regulatory compliance programs?
Please, ladies first again. Yeah.
Thank you. You're all very gentlemanly today. I think I would start maybe by the point of regulatory, the speed, let's say, or the lack of balance between how fast the innovation and the technology cycles move versus how fast a regulator or a policymaker can actually regulate, legislate, understand what's going on in the technology space. Because a lot of people look at the governance piece with a very big lens on compliance, which is not the only way, of course, the only reason why you should try to be, in the responsible, ethical AI game. But compliance drives a lot of these conversations that goes without saying. So at Salesforce, when you look at the company, the first thing you will see when you look online, you will find our core values, and our first core value is trust. And exactly because we are a company that serves customers that are enterprises, our number one priority is make sure that these companies, their data remains safe, secure. We are the custodians of this data, so it's our primary dedication and commitment is to our customers and, of course, the regulators. So making sure that trust keeps pace with innovation is the challenge and the goal. And I think your question when it comes to human-centric is really important when we talk about where we are now in our AI journey, which is not only Salesforce, society, which is agentic AI. We heard quite a bit today about AI agents, which I think makes the question about what is the role of the human in this equation even more interesting. How much autonomy should an agent have? In which cases, which use cases, etc. So for us as a company, because we have been working and researching AI for more than 10 years now, these are questions really at the very beginning we were already thinking about. Not only can we build something, but should we build something for our customers? And you start with your values as a company. You start also with some principles that you understand your use cases and what your customers are trying to achieve with these new technologies. And of course, AI is the hype, let's say, of the past couple of years. But before, we started in cloud, and people know Salesforce mostly because of cloud-based software, and of course, mobile, social media, kind of every technological transformation. We are trying to help our customers navigate that. So it's actually making sure you understand your customer needs. How do you build tools that help them as well achieve what they need in safe and compliant ways? So we had, like, when we started off, we had a set of principles that, of course, from predictive AI to generative to agentic AI, we evolve these principles. They are accuracy, safety, honesty, because talking to an agent, you need to know you're talking to an agent, for instance. Empowerment, because it's a very important thing to make sure how do you help humans succeed with AI. And sustainability, which is something I think we covered quite a bit in the presentation from NVIDIA just before. And I don't think I need to go into detail as to why these are important, because each of those kind of signifies the expectation our customers have from us. They expect accurate AI to the extent possible, safe AI, AI that helps them achieve their goals and also augments the abilities of their people, of their employees, of their workers. It's principles, then the question, how do you operationalize those? So we make tools available to all our customers. For instance, the trust layer is something we're making available throughout our agentic products. And the trust layer is a set of features and guardrails that make sure that the customer can have toxicity and bias controls, for instance, for when the output reaches them. So they make sure that, you have a marketing campaign, you use Salesforce, you don't send an email that offends your user base or customer base, for instance. We have an audit trail, which is very important, I think, for what we were discussing earlier in previous sessions with regard to transparency, making sure, understanding that it is a black box to an extent, but making sure you know why an agent took the decision they took. What is the data they based the action on? If it's an autonomous agent, can I go back and check, like, step by step the full cycle of the AI interaction? So with a tool like Audit Trail, you give your customer this ability to make sure that they have that covered as well. And then, of course, the governance system within every company. I think by now we have all kind of come to the conclusion it cannot be the job of one person or one entity within the company. It needs to be the ethicists. So we have our Office of Ethical and Humane Use, the product people, of course, they need to design it ethically and responsibly by default. The legal department is very important. I'm also a lawyer by training, I have to say that, because it's super important to make sure it's not only the EU AI Act, we heard from financial institutions, it's DORA, it's the GDPR, of course, no one forgets about the GDPR. It's the Data Act, it's like a lot of different regulations that come to play. And making sure that all these people talk to each other and there is like a common approach to how do you design your company governance systems.
Yeah, I think you covered everything, but I'll try to add a few more items. So human-centric approach on AI is a necessity in my view. It should start from the strategy, from the AI strategy for company, where in the strategy you have the drivers, you have the pillars, and you have the enablers. With regards to enablers, there should be 4 enablers, which is the people, the processes, and the technology, as well as in an ethical and responsible way. This is the extra dimension that, in my view, AI comes to add. And especially for MSD, the number 1 pillar that we are focusing on is the people pillar. And I mean, technology is changing so fast, and forgive me with the technology people here, but in my view, technology is not there yet, especially in the general intelligence part, and I don't know if it's ever going to be there. But in any case, the whole thing, though, with regards to human-centric AI, is summarized to what Aliki actually mentioned. And this is a powerful word that we have as humans, and it's trust. If I don't trust you, then I'm not going to be able to make the most out of our relationship, because it comes to a relationship between a human and a machine. So with regards to trust, there is an inherent problem with AI systems, and this is how they're being trained, how actually the whole system is functioning. One thing is the black box architecture, and the other one is the hallucinations that they have, and the accuracy of the models, obviously. And especially in healthcare, we cannot be talking about accuracy. If I talk to a software engineer, if it's like an 80% accuracy, they're going to be basically pulling a party together. In healthcare, that's not enough. So if you build especially systems, narrow intelligence systems, which can detect, for instance, a form of cancer, then you better make sure that this has a 90+% of accuracy. So all these elements are being taken care of with regards to internal policies that we have, as well as very strict regulation that we have, internal regulation, and sometimes on the other side, the commercial digital data guys, we struggle a bit with legal and compliance, but it has to be there, and it's there for a reason. So all these, the target of the company is to pave a human-centric approach. So all the checks that we perform, all the necessary legal, and one major thing with regards to black box architecture that we said before, which prevents us of launching applications, especially to HCPs or HCCs or patients or someone, is that you cannot predict what the outcome will be. So especially in a healthcare manner, it's very, very sensitive to let a machine go on the other side of the intelligence sphere and try and perform as a human. In healthcare in particular, I think we will most of the times be towards the narrow intelligent part and the agentic part, but not the general intelligence part. We could provide disclaimers, etc., but still, it's the processes that will hold the key to the responsible use of AI and to, in turns, the human-centric approach. And I'm not talking about the labor part, because, all companies have employees. AI is a big, huge, has a sociological impact with regards to employees, and whether, there's also a lot of things circulating in the news. Just the other day we were discussing, there was a big company, a European company, I'm going to name the company, a financial services company, who claimed that they basically reduced 50% of their workforce and they achieved a better performance. But is that going to happen? I don't know. It depends on what the company is, etc. There's going to be a shift in general, a sociological shift. So people are scared. It's only human. So this is also an aspect that has to be in the responsibility of the leaders within a company, within an organization, so that they can manage it with their people, because there is uncertainty. There is constant, we live in a world which is filled with uncertainty. So building the trust that I said in the beginning, I think it's a must also with a human to machine interaction.
It's truly encouraging from my lens to witness both the companies that you represent deeply care about that space. And one where another trust is very much embedded into the backbone of the processes that you have fleshed out to make sure that any single development process or deployment process even actually run safely, serves humanity to that extent. And you both actually through this towards the internal and the real structures that you have said both at the MSD but also Salesforce, which is a perfect pass, as a matter of fact, to actually pose very impression of quite a few of you guys joining us in the audience today, that speaks to, as AI shifts from pilots to core operations. What does end-to-end accountability actually mean? And how do you make ownership visible? How do you make it durable across different teams in our organizations. And I'd like to actually, given the interest of time, I'd like to pose that question to the analysts.
Just to connect perhaps this statement with what was said previously by our esteemed co-speakers. The human-centric element is for us essential. And of course, Microsoft was one of the first companies that has established its own set of principles when it comes to developing AI. I will not repeat them because I think Aliki mentioned quite all of them. I think technology companies are this, at least this aspect. But I would say that in the line of, or as we say in the AI value chain, it's always important to have a person, a human, accountable in the end of that value chain. Meaning, whatever AI systems you deploy, there has to be a human in the end to be accountable, to be held accountable, and to monitor the process. Now, and I would connect it also to the first question, which is what the government can do on that, in that respect. And I would say that one thing that the Greek government is doing very well in that respect is the ethical part of AI. There is an event that takes place every year. I would welcome everyone to attend it. It's the Elysium project. I know it's very close to the heart of the Prime Minister. Vasilis, you can vouch for that and keep me honest. And I think Greece is in a unique position, let's say, to double down and double click on that, in that aspect of AI and ethics. Also because of our rich, ancient philosophy and our principles embedded to that. Now, when it comes to the model, let's say, that each company can govern its AI evolution and development, I would say it's also important to have a very clear RACI model. For those that don't know, RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And these are roles that every employee in each company has to have in this AI value chain and across the departments, meaning from legal, from risk, from even in the technical sector. And the other important aspect, I would say, is the follow-up, the continuous monitoring. There is a life cycle in these products, and we tend to, let's say, acknowledge the first part, which is the development or the deployment, and then, we kind of forget about the two next, which is the use and the retirement of the product. So there needs to be a constant monitoring and a constant follow-up and making sure that the AI systems are being deployed, used in a responsible way according to the regulation that is out there.
Moving on to the last bit of the discussion that we like to actually frame, speaks to the EU Act from paper to practice. On the HBA, I would actually like to pose the first question for this one, Vasilis. And I would like to pick your brain a little when it comes to from your own vantage points. Which solutions would actually make the biggest difference in terms of AI adoption and also trust? Will it be guidance? Will it be regulatory sandboxes? Will it be beliefs and capacity building? Or something else entirely?
Thank you for the discussion, for the question, and on what was heard before. I think it's really important to talk about AI safety. What's more amazing is AI opportunity, I would say. The AI Act is, and when you're a big business or even when you're a small business, you definitely need a stand of standard rules, right? A regulatory Far West is not beneficial for anyone, so it's good for competition and so on. But the moment it gets too complicated, or the moment, first draft of the Act came, date back to 2019, right? And I'm very cognizant here to tiptoe on what I'm saying because it's going to be enforced, but AI adoption across businesses in the EU is at around 30%. Greece is around 9.5. Now, we don't blame the act for that, obviously, right? There are many things that pertain to that. Data is one of them. Talent is another. Right? We hear all the time from the private sector here in Greece as well that we need talent. We need engineers. We need people who understand this, and we also do that as well. There are talent constraints in government as well for many reasons, which we can take a day to discuss. But we also need engineers. We need people who understand both the legal aspect and the technical aspect of it, especially now that we'll be creating those designated authorities. But to get back to your question, I think what's important in this context is clear rules, and clear rules are not just designated in the legal text itself. Like I take time to read all the paperwork that's coming from the EU, and sometimes it gets even complicated for us. I have my regulatory counterpart and my policy counterpart in the Ministry of Digital Governance and other Vasilis, and we discuss these things all the time. And if it's hard for a policymaker and people who have a legal background sometimes understand these things, I can imagine how it is for someone who is, let's say, fresh out of college, with an idea in mind, trying to raise money, focusing 24/7 to build their own startup. Their first reaction is, who gives a... And what we can do there is, as a government, obviously the EU now set up a help desk which will help businesses navigate the intricacies of the AI Act and so on. But what we can do on a national level is, first of all, we will be passing a legislation that will try to make it as clear, as simple to understand as possible. But at the same time, we ourselves need to provide guidelines, both internally within government, but externally to businesses, sector-specific, as to how these rules apply to them, to make it easier for them to innovate. A classic example of high-risk AI systems is that they're too wide and broad, and they don't take into account context, and therefore make it harder for businesses to innovate. So maybe that's where government can kind of step in and help, right? I see government as having three different roles. The one is a regulator, right? Regulate, you pose the rules, you make sure they're enforced and so on. The other one is a facilitator, which, trying to create those public-private partnerships, create the landing ground for businesses to lift off and so on. And the third one, which I think is maybe the most important one and undervalued, and we've tried to do that over the past few years, is that of an innovator. Not only create sector-specific examples that can work as really good best practices even for the private sector, but also try to help industry and heavy industry sometimes, which is maybe the hardest to follow through to adopt AI. I know we're close on time, so I'll stop here.
Totally cautious of time, but if I may, was a very weak, almost tutor-like fashion question to the thing of analysts that speaks to broader essence of the EU AI Act. And again, I would appreciate a 15 seconds response from all you guys. What is actually working at the EU AI Act, and what is actually missing? That's one.
I'll do super short, which is, if I had an emoji, I would do +1, what you said, to a large extent. I think the example of what is high risk and what is not high risk is a crucial one. Understanding for a company that wants to develop AI and a company that wants to adopt AI, they need to understand what am I facing. The ecosystems are becoming more complex. No one is just a developer, just a deployer, just an integrator. We're all in the same ecosystem. There is guidance coming. The more clarity and the more context-based use cases we can also see. So there's not this kind of roads. Let's capture everything that operates in the deployment sector. Let's capture everything that operates in the education sector, etc. Will be important.
As I said before as well, it's a good start, but in my view, the technology evolution is so fast that I'm really, concerned that the regulator will be falling behind constantly. And this is the first time in mankind where we're not talking about a technology. This is not a tool. AI is not a tool. AI is not a solution. AI, it's the first time where technology actually is an agent. So if we try and, reflect on that, we're going to see that, a machine left aside without a proper regulation and control, might have, whatever impact it's going to have. So, in my view, it has to be, the act has to be more specific. I know that complexity is increasing, so it's very difficult for the regulator and the legislator to actually impose one solution will fit all, but there needs to be very close monitoring in the sense that, we need to be ahead of the developments.
Very quickly, I would start with the negative, so what doesn't work, and it's not, let's say, 100% certain, but I would say the multiplicity of subordinate regulation allowing countries, EU member states, to legislate according to their own will poses the risk of creating a non-homogeneous regulatory framework across Europe. And we explained in the beginning why this poses a risk for startups and innovation in Europe to flourish. What works, I would say, the human rights part, the whole ethical part of the AI Act, I think it's a very strong foundation. It complies, it aligns with other similar texts like the UN resolution for AI. So I think this is a paradigm, it's an example that we can all follow.
Really quick, and I'll just focus on the good part, because I think I've trashed on the act a bit too much as a government official. The good part is, you do want to shape the global public policy debate, because if you don't, someone else will, right? You don't want to leave a vacuum out there. You want to create a space where, and that has happened. The UA Act is a foundational text, and everyone speaks to it. They trust it, or they support it, or they create frameworks that are, maybe based on it, but it has set a precedent. And Europe is good at that. So I would say the good part is that you're definitely shaping the global public policy debate, ideally not just that.
I know that our host actually has quite a few questions for us. We have
5 minutes, I guess, there are questions. So I'll merge them a bit, because there are most of them around regulation, which apparently was the question of the last topic. So I think, and we can move them up on the wall, but looking ahead 2 years from now, do you think Europe will be leading AI or still catching up because of all the red tape? And a follow-up maybe on that, it's, we're moving slower because of the regulation. Do we need to let innovation breathe, or we need to continue on regulating in EU?
I'm a firm believer that innovation and regulation are not mutually exclusive. So I'm always arguing with that, especially with us, people are like, oh, it's like innovation. I'm like, no, like total regulation can actually help with innovation. Now, falling behind, the question can be in terms of developing artificial intelligence, using artificial intelligence, because sometimes I think the conversation in the policy circles is very much focused when you see European governments really wanting, and the European Commission, to have the AI champions in Europe, not necessarily looking at champions of use of AI, meaning developing innovative applications and innovative solutions based on artificial intelligence tools that already exist here. So you can see sometimes the debate a little bit overly focused on building AI that is European versus making sure European enterprises, companies of all sizes, as I said, in all sectors, have the capacity to adopt these tools. So my hope is really that we actually pay enough focus once the act is there, and we try all to go through it and navigate it. We actually pay the European governments and policymakers enough focus on the adoption piece as well, which has started in Brussels as a conversation. Hopefully we can see more of that in the next few years.
I guess we're covered. Anyone wants to make a comment? All right, cool.
One quick point I want to make here is that it doesn't just have to do with regulation. Obviously, simplifying rules is very important. At the same time, you need there's no actual capital markets really, right? So when you're a startup and you're trying to raise money, it won't be as seamless as it is in Athens, as it can be in Berlin or Paris, and so on. So there's a ripple effect of measures that need to be taken that don't just pertain to regulation, but also making sure that Europe as a continent is much more intrinsically connected in terms of capital. We have an issue with capital, and then that pertains also, for example, to to bankruptcy law, which is quite punitive in the European Union in general, right? When you're bankrupt once, you're probably bankrupt for life. Exaggeration, but my point is that in the US, you have a chance at it again. So it's both, a capital markets union, so raising money, but at the same time, having the regulatory framework that allows you to fail and start again.
Correct. Yeah, I guess most people are more concerned about all these features that they're not allowed in EU Act, like up from Apple and stuff like that, and they're allowed in other continents, but it is what it is right now. If agents based on AI do interact with people at large and take ownership of conversations as interactions, who takes the liability against misuse or misinformation or misguidance on fields that do affect sensitive aspects of life like health or public policy?
Very good question. I don't have the answers. Who takes accountability is a huge topic in general. There has been a long debate in the legal circles, not only Europe but globally, on who takes accountability in general. Is the user, is the creator of the application, is it the application itself? Because there is also an opinion that machines should have rights as well to protect themselves from unlawful use, which actually opens up a whole huge chapter. So, in my view, it should be a shared accountability with regards to, yes, the user has its own part of accountability, the company has its own part of releasing something which has its issues, and the machine itself. Because, as I said before, now machines are agents. As was the question. So how do you regulate that? I have no idea. But it needs to be there needs to be clear accountability with regards to all three parties. I would add the machine in there as well.
All right. And for public policy,
yeah. If I can share one point here. We see that almost all companies, especially the big ones, have their own internal governance system in order to prohibit, let's say, the maluse of their products and their services. However, I would say that some companies do it better than others. And I'm saying this because I've heard this question time and time again, and I've been called to answer it. And honestly, I don't have much to say because the company that I represent doesn't really have a lot to say in that area, not because we don't see it as a valid risk, but because we've made sure that we do not produce, let's say, products, or we don't offer services through which we are deliberately propagating or disseminating misinformation, disinformation, and the likes. Microsoft has taken the lead in many international initiatives and has called for other companies also to join these initiatives to mitigate disinformation, misinformation with, there are tools, first of all. Let's also be clear on that. There are tools and there are solutions if you want to address those issues. I guess the point, and it's very delicate also in the time that we're living now, and I'm talking about the international geopolitical situation, but there are solutions that can inform the public and can inform the user on whether content is a product of synthetic media, as we call it, or and so on and so forth. So I would agree with Panos that it's a kind of there is a duality in the responsibility. It's the user, it's the developer, it's the deployer. But I would say that it's also a matter of choice. And this comes from the natural world, I would say. We don't have to always, try to reinvent the wheel here. Misinformation, disinformation was there even before AI, before digital systems were so proliferated. It's a matter of how we are trained, how the user, how the people are trained, and what kind of choices we make when we use them.
Right.
just on that, just a very good comment. Just to give some food for thought for everyone, think also of the fact that since we are basically humans, right? We use tools and we use search engines. I'm not going to name the company, you all know the company, which has now around, I think, 78% of the internet search engine market share. So, but this is a search. So search, you take. If the same thing will happen, LLM, for instance, with, I don't want to name whatever it is, since those LLMs are actually being trained, and we're not 100% clear on how they're trained, especially search engines from big countries in a different culture. Again, I'm not going to name it countries, because I have an experiment, and I asked a Western civilization tool some really difficult questions with regards to Western civilization, with regards to connections between media and politicians and all these things. And I also asked the Oriental big LLM similar questions with regards to difficult democracy questions with regards to that country per se. The behavior I got was extremely interesting because it was not a data bias behavior, but with regards to one of the two search engines, again I'm not going to tell you which one, the machine actually responded pretty nicely and in a pretty subjective way, but at the end it erased its answer and it said, I cannot answer this. So what I'm trying to make a point here is that if at the end of the day one of these machines will be a machine of choice, will it maybe be responsible for cultivating our own way of thinking and acting. So this is just a food for thought, and it actually comes down to accountability and false misinformation or whatever. Sorry about
No, it's good. I think we're out of time, so there was one more question about how is government going to support Pharos, the first Greek AI factory from Democritus, and how private businesses will be able to exploit the benefits. And we'll close with that.
So, from a timeline perspective, the two things that are intertwined. One is the supercomputer that's being built in Latvia. The supercomputer is embedded in the facility being built. So we'll have the supercomputer every year, and then it will be delivered to the facility. And Pharos now, we're structuring the legal entity around it. And I think it will be ready April 2026. To your question, Pharos specifically supports the verticals, which is climate and civil protection, it's healthcare, it's culture and culture data space, as we call it. So research institutions and SMEs that focus specifically on this will have, let's say, proprietary or privileged access to compute. Now the business model around it, whether this is going to be in a voucher-like fashion, whether this is going to be free up to a point, and so on, it's being decided now. Because what you also need to know is that Pharos for at least 2.5 or 3 years is running on EU Commission money and national funds, but then it has to have a sustainable business model for it to work. Meaning that yes, it will be more competitive in comparison to what the hyperscalers are offering. It's game their offerings, okay. But at the same time, it still needs to have a sustainable business model to be operated by government or entities around the government. So going back to the question, it's either going to be voucher-based, it's going to be free up to a point, it will focus on research institutions and SMEs, and it will mostly cover these 3 verticals.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And in the interest of time, and because we have abused immensely your time already, there are lots of lessons learned, but I'm not going to loop it up or just put them in a nutshell. I would like to thank you for your engagement and enthusiasm through those questions, and please join me in a warm round of applause for our panel. Thank you.